Welcome to Don't Chuck It Up, the podcast where we help students and families navigate the wild journey of the college search and applying to colleges without breaking a sweat. I'm your host, Chuck, and today we are discussing how to help parents empower their students through the college process. And I am so excited today to have on a wonderful guest, my coworker, my friend, Kate Malczewski from College Connectors. Welcome, Kate, to the Don't Chuck It Up podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here, Chuck.
So we've been working together for 10 years. Over the course of our higher education lives, we've probably worked with thousands of students, if you want to think about it that way. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important that we make sure that parents understand their role in this process. I was actually just meeting with a family yesterday with a ninth grader who was going, okay, what are we supposed to be doing? How are we supposed to be helping? So let's dive into this. What are some things well, first, let's find out a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh, that's wonderful. So my name is Kate, and I have been working as an independent educational consultant at College Connectors for 12 years now, and owner for over 10 years. It's been very exciting to think about how many students I've helped along the path. And one of my true passions is helping to launch students, which is really fun because everyone has a different pathway. And now that I've been doing this for over 10 years, it's really great to see where they are at in their careers. And having played just a little tiny part in that is very exciting for me. So I really think that what we do at College Connectors is so invaluable, whether we're starting with students in ninth grade or starting with students their junior year through the search process. We're really able to kind of allow them a chance and an opportunity to be thoughtful about what their needs are in the college search and admissions process, and also really kind of present their best selves through the application process. So it's very exciting, and we have a great team at College Connectors full of really, savvy and, like I like to say, like wickedly smart counselors, which Chuck, you are a part of course. So.
Yeah, it's been great being a part of College Connectors now for 10 years. Man, have those years flown by. But we really have an amazing team of experts from a wide variety of backgrounds that help students and families navigate the process. The other great fun part is that we're mostly working virtual, so we're able to really help students and families anywhere in the United States and even outside of the United States, because we've even had some families work with us from outside the United States. So yeah, great. It's been a lot of fun working with College Connectors.
Great.
No, you're fine. All right. So today we wanted to talk about how to help parents empower their students and what parents can be doing to really support their kids through really this first major decision process of their life. So let's start talking about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, there's so much to talk about, actually. And so I think that it's almost like important to break it up into kind of the early high school part, and then also the later high school, 11th and 12th grade versus 9th and 10th. So really starting out with the 9th and 10th graders. I think a parent's role is to really encourage them to have a really strong high school experience. And what that means is, encourage them in their curiosity, their academic curiosity. We really want them to have a love of learning, right? And that's different for every student. But there's high school is 4 years. It can feel long. There's really hard years. There's easier years. But if you as parents can really encourage them to be in a place where they enjoy their classes, where they enjoy learning, where they're exploring those curiosities, it's an important thing to do. The other important piece too is the social piece. Extracurricular activities, whether they are with the school or whether they are independent hobbies, is an important piece of developing a whole student, right? Or a whole person. And colleges see that. Colleges understand that. So they're not just admitting an academic, they're admitting a person in their community that's going to live on that campus. And so we always encourage parents to encourage a wide variety of exploration in terms of extracurricular activities. You don't need to limit yourself to one activity as a first year student, right? A freshman in high school.
Absolutely.
You can't, yeah. So really, like, having a wide variety of things, and then gradually students will find kind of their niche and find their, what they're passionate about or what they enjoy doing in high school, and that's important. And those activities, whether they're formalized in a group or they are independent hobbies, those activities lead to leadership. Those activities lead to some of those like self-advocacy skills, confidence. That's really important to do. So when you think about like ninth and 10th grade, it's really about encouraging high school, being a strong high school student. I also think the other thing that transitions to is like developmentally, there is a big difference between like a 13-year-old going into ninth grade rather than like an 18-year-old graduating high school, right?
Oh
And so
yeah.
I think one of the really important things is to understand where your child is at developmentally. Okay.
Hmm.
A good example of this is thinking about when you think about the college admissions processes in ninth grade, it's probably not wise to set in a certain type of school your student is going to go to, right?
Right.
That's probably not developmentally appropriate. However, talking about college and the idea of it and why students could go to college or why students may decide on a trade school or an alternative route, like
Hmm.
that is wonderful to do that freshman year, right? Because often if you think about it and step back, the idea of college, they might actually not know exactly what that means, right? Like we've worked
Absolutely.
with ninth graders where we talk about like a bachelor's degree. And that's so, that is part of my normal daily language, right?
Right.
But they don't actually know that. But as parents, we might not realize that, right? And counselors. So we almost have to like start from the base level and educate students about, hey, a bachelor's degree means 4 years, and then they go on to like a master's or PhD. Or did you know if you want to be a lawyer, what you think might be a lawyer, you go straight to law school from undergrad, right?
Right.
So so I
Well,
think really stepping back and understanding that they may not know like that terminology, the vocabulary on what we as adults know, right? So developmentally, really kind of understanding where they're at is an important piece of this process.
yeah. So I want to go back a little bit to the
Mhm.
extracurriculars because this was the conversation that I was having yesterday actually with these parents, and they're going, well, do they need to be in these formalized clubs or organizations at the high school? Do they have to be in the highly competitive things? And I would say that even if there are parents of middle schoolers thinking about how can I best prepare my kid for college, just get them exploring their curiosities. It could be things through the recreation center. It could be stuff that is very official. It could be a hobby that they're doing at home and they're really kind of learning into it. So, what do you think about how we can help parents think of other extracurriculars that might not be okay, well, my kid's not an athlete, my kid's not, a music kid. What are some other things that parents can help their kids explore?
Ooh, that's a great question, Chuck. So I think one of the things is reaching out to local community, right? Like understanding what opportunities are available in your community. So, for example, um, if your student really enjoys children, right? They enjoy working with kids. Um, there is a huge range of opportunities. So that could be they could volunteer at the local parks and rec department. They could maybe get a job in a daycare. They could do lessons. Like, for example, if they've been taking piano lessons for years, maybe they start their own lessons, right? Like they do something that combines those two interests together. So I think one of the things parents can be really good at is understanding the local resources. That's just
Hmm.
not something that teenagers know quite yet, right?
Right.
But we have access to all of this through the internet. We know Parks and Rec, we know communities, we know even businesses or friends of friends, right?
Yeah.
where you can reach out to help open up those kind of niches for your student to explore those personal hobbies. And I often think, even with students I've worked with, like if they have a passion, um, encouraging them to like, hey, why don't you start a blog on that?
Yeah.
You know, start a vlog, something. So for example, I have a student who is in ninth and 10th grade, and um, she loves going to coffee shops. Like, I mean, so this
All
is
right.
this is beyond, it's kind of a passion of hers, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting because as she's at coffee shops, she's hearing all these other conversations of adults, right?
Oh.
And I'm like, and she's evaluating, she has a mind where she's evaluating kind of the different mochas between the coffee shops. And so I suggested, like, okay, let's do something with this. Why don't you start a blog? Because you can, and she's a strong writer, so you can kind of dig into like the flavor profiles, but also think about, hey, coffee shops are different. They're
Mhm.
really interesting. You overhear this. And so that kind of pulls in some strengths this person has with this passionate interest she has just by like doing what she loves, going to a coffee shop. And so, I mean, and I think just thinking creatively and thinking outside of the box is
Yes.
really important to do.
And I think that's where parents can also ask, people like us or work with their high school counselor to think about how can I help my student get creatively. I've had athletes volunteer for the sports and recreation league and be a
Right?
referee
Exactly.
or be a scorer, or if they're interested in, oh, I want to work in the sports industry. Well, that starts with like volunteering in your own community. If you're not a strong writer, you can do a photo journal instead and start up an Instagram account and take pictures of whatever you're excited about. Like if you would have told me to write a blog at
Oh,
14, I would have been like, nope, I'm done. But if you were to tell me to take photos of what I love, then I'd be like, yeah, I'm all in that way. So
exactly.
that goes into and utilize the colleges in your area. A lot of colleges have summer camps or day camps or programs that are low cost, really easy. And that's a great way to kind of almost kill two birds with one stone, where you get to experience a college and explore one of your passions. And that's what I wanted to talk about is you said help the students get knowledgeable about the vocabulary of college.
Mhm.
Do you think that parents should be bringing their ninth or 10th grader to go possibly visit or tour college?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's interesting. I do think it makes sense to help like get those students on college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
I think a ninth grader is probably a little young yet to do a formalized admissions visit. Because to be honest, like admissions counselors are really kind of focused on like, sophomore, 11th seniors, right? They're more immediate. But if you can get them to an athletic event, if
Oh,
you can get
yeah.
them to a choir concert, maybe a debate, an academic summer program, like you said, or even like, to be quite honest, like college campuses are beautiful. They are scenic, they have really great cozy spaces. Even going on a walk on one during a family vacation, like just a drive through or a walk
Mm-hmm.
to see what it might feel like is really important. And as a ninth grader, I think that can be impactful because it helps college become more tangible to them,
Yes.
right? Because college, I feel like if they've never seen a college or been on a college campus, it just feels like too abstract, right?
Right.
But if you can actually like get them on a college campus and walk them around and even going into, the student union which is often open even during the summer to look at, hey, look what this cafeteria looks like, or if you could get into a residence hall or and see what a dorm looks like, I think that's a shock for ninth graders too, especially those who maybe have these big 10-foot by 10-foot single rooms. Like the idea of sharing a room with someone's kind of interesting. So I think that changes so early in high school, like introducing college in that way is probably
Mm-hmm.
best. Um, and
Well,
then as it,
I was
oh,
gonna
go ahead.
say also there's the whole campus virtual tours. Like one of the best
Yep.
things that came out of the COVID pandemic is that colleges made a lot of their campus tours virtual, and so you could sit at home with your kid and watch a tour
Mhm.
together and kind of ask, like, what were you surprised by? What did you like? What did you not like? But yeah, I love your idea of utilize the colleges that are near you It could be the 2-year, the 4-year, the public, the private. It doesn't matter, but go for a walk. A lot of them also have really cool art museums or history museums on campus that you can go and
Yep.
learn something together. There might be even a program that you can do as a family and go do something on the college campus and really kind of check it out. But yeah, students nowadays, when they get to junior, senior year and they're coming to talk to Kate and I, a lot of them have said the only thing they know about college is what they've seen on the movies or on Netflix
Mhm.
or on YouTube. And I'm just going, a lot of that is fake. So
Or on Instagram.
yeah, or on
Yeah.
Instagram where the pictures are perfect and the dorm rooms are 30 feet by 30 feet for some
Yeah.
magical reason because of the camera angle. So yeah, go and experience your local colleges, or if you're going to go visit, grandma, grandpa, or other relatives, check out a college that's near them and see what that looks like. And it's a great way to introduce your kid to the aspect and the various vibes of college campuses.
For sure, completely. And I think visiting a variety of college campuses too is important to do, right? Not just a certain type, not just
Yes.
small colleges or
Yes.
large colleges, really. And this expands even into that junior year and sophomore and junior year is really digging into like, let's look at a large school, let's look at a
Yes.
small, medium, because we want to like have your student explore. And, that's just so important so that they really have an understanding and thoughtfulness about what might be a good fit for them.
Go back to the Goldilocks nursery rhyme. Goldilocks herself needed to try things of all shapes and all sizes before she decided what she liked. And I oftentimes tell kids that college is kind of the same way. You got to see what size fits you. And for your best friend, it might be a very large college. And for you, it might be a smaller college. And that's okay.
Yep, completely.
All right. So we've got them exploring their interests. We're helping them navigate the terms and the vibes of colleges. How else can parents empower their students through this process?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like what like that junior year looks like
Sure.
and even into senior year a little bit. And so this is where I like to use the analogy of like teaching your children how to drive, okay? Because this often happens during the sophomore year, freshman and sophomore
Yep.
year. So this kind of the same techniques you use during that process can be used in the college admissions process. And so it should be fresh in your mind since it's just kind of a year old in some ways. But as much as we want to as parents, like take over that wheel, right? Like it is
Mhm.
terrifying the first 2 times in the car with a new driver, right? But you can't. You're in the passenger seat, and that's very much the same thing about the college search and admissions process. You are not leading this. You should be encouraging, empowering your student to take the driver's seat. And that's different for every student, right? Because some students are a little more timid. Some students might feel overwhelmed about the whole idea.
Yes.
Some students might be ready to go and they're like driving 50 miles per hour, like down the city streets, right?
Mhm.
But so you kind of have to understand where your student is at and how they feel about it. And that's the important piece is to talk to them. Um, Ask them how they feel about the college admissions process, or ask them how they feel about college or what they know about it. And I think really starting that process with an open communication is important instead of thinking, okay, this is my plan for my child. We're going to visit 10 schools here, 15 schools there. That could be right, and that might not be right. But that conversation in the beginning, and let's say that's the beginning of junior year, can maybe help you plan what junior year feels like. For some, they're ready to go. Others, they might need to get through that first semester. And that's an important piece to understand too, because really at the beginning of their junior year, they are still in the middle of their high school experience,
Absolutely.
like right in the middle. And yet we're asking them to think about 2 years down the road, making a somewhat major life decision.
Oh yeah.
And they've probably never had to do that before. And so, it really needs to be incremental. And this kind of aligns with that learning to drive analogy. Like you're not going to put a brand new driver on the interstate right away with construction.
Please no.
No, that's disaster. But you're going to start them off on city streets. You're going to start them going around the block. You're actually going to like start with driver's ed classes, right? Like that's those conversations, understanding, getting them some information about what college is, right? And then you gradually start getting them into a situation that they are able to handle on the road, And so just kind of know it. Often it's not everything at once. It's gradual and it's incremental. So I think that's an important piece that analogy is. And often during the junior year, I think it's a really great time for a student to be thoughtful about who they are as a student,
Yeah.
and be really kind of reflective about what their needs are, who they are, how they study best, what kind of people they like to be around, um, even how their high school experience is going. What's the right level of rigor? Like I've given, like, there's a lot of things I've just like touched on,
Mm-hmm.
but as a parent, you can encourage those thoughts and conversations, um, because then they'll just know a little bit more about how to determine if a college is a right fit. And so we often, I often feel like students want to fit themselves into a school, a certain type
Yes.
of mold or school.
Yes.
And we don't want that. There's over 3,000 colleges in the United States. There will be colleges that fit them as people and as students. And I think that's a really important piece, is to encourage that and to kind of let them know that they are who they are, and let's find a school that fits them.
Well, I think with all of this is even the whole process of what you're speaking about earlier is like, okay, how do we get started? Sometimes, it's really up to the kid, and some students are ready to go and look at colleges as a sophomore. And as you and I are aware, sometimes we get called at the beginning of senior year because they're finally ready to start looking. And that's a common question that I get from parents is when do we start looking? It's when your kid starts to become curious and interested in saying, oh, what's this whole college thing? You may have to prep them a little bit, but don't try and push the kid into, okay, we got to go visit 20 schools this summer, because if they're not ready for that, it's going to be a very ugly experience. And I think the other point that you're making is that the kid has to understand who they are a little bit in order to really get through this process. And oftentimes our parents that work with college connectors go, okay, so what's this magic stuff that you do? And it's like, a lot of the magic that we do is just helping the kid understand who they are and what they like and what gets them excited about learning in the future. And instead of, as you just said, okay, what's the best college that I can go to, and how do I get into that best college? And I'm going, oh, that's like trying to put a square peg into a round hole. That's just not going to be a great experience.
Yeah. And it's kind of like our process. Like when we work with students, it's like we are getting to know the student first.
Yeah.
And by going through that process, they're able to reflect on who they are. And after that, we teach them about colleges, right? Like then you learn about them. And then after that, that's where you find a good fit. It's not starting with the college first.
Right.
Like that does rarely works out, I think.
Yeah, it's not like we start with the Ivies and just work our way down the entire 3,000 colleges and be like,
tell me
when you like one.
Exactly. So,
all right, so we've got them doing some exploration, some thoughtful reflection, exploring a wide variety of schools is always great. And this is often hard for parents because many parents really only looked at a few schools. So if parents are kind of Gen Xers or even a little bit older, they may have only looked at a couple colleges, and they're going, okay, maybe parents need to do some searching for themselves and go, okay, what other schools are nearby us that we can go check out? I have literally surprised some parents and shown them that, hey, there's a college about 30 minutes west of you, and mom and dad will be like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. So parents might have to educate themselves as to what colleges are near you or within a good, safe driving distance or a place that you're traveling to. And again, please don't just go to the colleges that everyone has heard of or the ESPN schools that you've seen on TV. Be willing to check out something that you as a parent haven't explored and maybe your kid has never heard of either, because that could be actually what fits.
It's true. Yeah. And as I said, like there's over 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States. And I think that, really being open to a wide variety of schools. And I think that's especially important now more than ever because the landscape of admissions
Yes.
is changing drastically, like from year to year, especially over the last like 3 to 4 years, and will continue to do so. And so, Chuck, if you want to pull up that PowerPoint
Sure. So, for
slide.
those of you who are listening on the podcast, we also are going to have this interview posted on my YouTube channel. So, make sure that you go and so make sure you check out the YouTube channel as well. So, what I'm pulling up right now is a picture called The Landscape of College Admissions, and it's full of a bunch of circles that are basically representing the 3,000 colleges that are in the United States in various shapes and sizes. So, Kate, what is this image trying to help our families understand?
Yeah, it kind of does a great job of breaking down the landscape of admission. And so from, one side, we talk about the very selective institutions that admit less than 20%. There's probably like that's a very small number of schools actually. It's about 90 schools that admit that. And those are often the schools that we hear about a lot, right?
Yes.
The well-known ones, whatever they are. Then if you look in kind of in the middle, the group of circles in the middle, it's a much smaller section. That's a group of schools that admit between, let's say, like 25% to 40% of students, right? And there's actually less of those schools. I'll come back to that section in a minute. And then on the next section, it's those schools that admit like, 45 to 90% of schools or 80% of students, right? And it's a huge section. So I think this graphic is really important in a couple different ways. It kind of signifies that there are a huge number of colleges that want to admit students. They are looking for really amazing students. They are providing amazing resources, education, experiences to so many students. Versus the 80 or 90 colleges that are admitting really small numbers of kids, and they're not looking to admit. They're looking to handpick students, and they're highly rejective.
Yes.
But the interesting thing is that middle section is now what's happening because so many students are applying to so many schools. That section used to be bigger. There used to be quite a number of schools that are admitting between that like 30% to 50% of students. It's getting smaller and smaller because those schools are moving up into that range where they're admitting only about 20 to 25% of students. And then some are moving to admitting more. Okay. So it's kind of this vicious circle that it's easier to apply to colleges. So students are applying to more colleges, but colleges aren't admitting more students. They have a set number of seats. They have a set number of beds, academic resources available. So that number is very small. So it is crucial that families are really open to a wide variety of colleges because regardless, even if you're that perfect 4.0, you have a 35, 36 on your ACT, you have leadership roles like at your school, there is absolutely no guarantee that you will be admitted to those schools, those highly selective schools. So it's much different than it was, let's say like 10 years ago, and then highly different than what it was when we all went to colleges, right? Because some of those selective schools weren't selective. Some were admitting 80%, and because of marketing efforts and how the years have changed, like they are now admitting 20% of students. There's quite a few of those schools I could list that are like that. So just know that rankings doesn't equal success.
Right.
The best kind of predictor of success, much like in high school, is what the students are doing while they're in the school that they are in, right? How they're taking advantage of the resources, how they're taking advantage of the opportunities that they have and doing it because, many students can end up in the same location. Many adults end up in the same location, regardless of the education where they started out in college.
Well, and to put this whole college thing for people who like numbers, we're talking about when students say, oh, I want to get into a top 20 school, you're talking about literally less than 1% of the nation's colleges. And the hard part is that those ultra selective, so the top 90, as you were talking earlier, which is roughly, 3% of the nation's colleges, those are some of the most famous names that people have heard. And it's really hard for students to look beyond that because of all the marketing, the branding, the, videos that they're seeing or the social media that they're seeing. So parents really need to also help them look beyond that, because if everyone's trying to get into the top 3% of colleges, it does not mean that the other 97% are bad. It's just that they're
No.
not as famous. And sometimes that's regionalism. Sometimes that's based off of, who won the last great sporting event. And so they're getting a lot of press. As you and I know, we've seen the rise and fall of colleges in popularity where, 10 years ago, I would say a certain name of a college and the parents are like, oh no, we're not looking at that. And now 10 years later, they're coming to me saying, oh, we need to apply to XYZ college because we've heard great things. And I was like, wow, have things changed in 10 years? So they really do have to use the full options of college and not just look at the ones that are strictly brand names. All right. So what are some other things that we can help parents do to keep their kids going and empower them to have a great and successful college search process?
Yeah. Well, I think there's something that's really important that I don't know that all families think about upfront. And it requires parents to do some thinking, is setting expectations with their children. And so that's both setting expectations for the search and application process, but also setting expectations of or hopes even about what that college experience would be like. And so let's also actually start with that. Many families haven't necessarily thought yet about the financial fit or what that yearly budget looks like in their family. And so that's a huge consideration that I always tell families to think about early, plan for early, because college costs just keep rising, right? And we know this, and colleges do well to offer academic scholarships, but it's or try to meet need, but it's often not anywhere close to what we think it's going to be, right? And so I think it's very important to have those conversations between parents, whoever's paying for education, even during, elementary school, which might feel silly, but it's important to kind of plan ahead. For sure in high school and for sure when that college search process starts. And it's important to have your student understand what those parameters might be, those financial parameters. And some families don't want to talk about that, but we don't want families to get down the line and have two things happen. One, they have a lot of colleges on the list, the final options, where they really can't afford to send their child there, and or for the child to pay for it. And that's why, financial fit is one of the things we talk about in our process, along with academic and social fit. But that's a really important piece. So that might mean you have a variety of schools with different admissions selectivity, right? Like different academic diversity on that list. Because you never know. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is, if I can teach all parents one thing, this is the thing that they really need to talk about amongst the family. And whether you're a single parent or you're married or, maybe grandparents are helping out, no matter what your budget is, there are colleges out there that we can help find that fit your budget. But you really need to understand what your budget is. I get frustrated when parents go, well, they can look at whatever colleges they want and we'll financially make it work. We'll just make it work. And I'm just going, no. I mean, the landscape of the loans out there is changing constantly. It's getting harder and much bigger interest rates. And you shouldn't be spending your lifehood of savings that you were planning on using for your retirement on your kids' education. Yes. And there are great things like 529 plans, and I have a whole podcast on that if people want to hear about that. But do have some type of financial understanding and help your kid understand it. The other thing that has changed is that for many parents, they were able to pay for college on their own when they were in high school through summer jobs and through scholarships and stuff. And that has changed. It is
Yeah.
difficult for you to say to your 17-year-old, yep, you're just going to work and you're going to be able to pay for your own school. Is that possible? Yes, but the colleges that are financially in that space are
Mhm.
much, much smaller than what they were 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Correct, correct. And I think the other important piece along with that is really having a conversation with your student to make sure they understand if they're expected to contribute,
Yes.
right? Because it is unfair to a student, at the beginning of, let's say, the summer of their senior year,
Mm-hmm.
or after their senior year, to say, hey, we expect you to pay for $10,000 of this
Yeah.
and living expenses or room, whatever it is. If they
Yeah.
haven't had the opportunity to make that decision to have a part-time job and or select a school with that they are comfortable
Yes.
contributing to, right? And so sometimes there is the conversation where the final decisions lie between, hey, we have a school that costs X amount. You will be contributing, 5,000 to this plus loans, or this school that costs a much lower rate, but you don't have to contribute it as much. And so if you don't help that student understand what
Mm-hmm.
those options are and that contributions from the very beginning, then it will be much harder for them to make that decision, or my decision might be pulled from them, because ultimately those loans, as we know, they can last up to, 10
Long time.
years.
Long
And
time.
or if they are going off to graduate school
Yeah.
too, that's a cost and an expense that they may have to pay. So they may decide to forego the more expensive college,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that they might have to contribute to a grad school experience. And so really, really having those important conversations ahead of time is very important, to have with your child, so
Yeah.
that you know, they are looked at and feel ownership of the process too. And I think that's why we're here. That's what we want to do, is help develop independent adults. And if
Right.
you can give them that information, you're empowering them to help make an adult decision.
Well, and this goes back even to some of your early points about what can students do to get ready for college. Having a part-time job is something that
Yeah.
can help a kid get ready for college, and it kind of serves dual purpose. They're earning money and saving that hopefully for college, and not just going to the mall every day or spending it on expensive coffee. But it also gives them skills and starts building their skill base for things in the future. Also, I don't know if parents are aware, but colleges do kind of expect students to contribute to their financial expenses. So that's why a lot of colleges offer work study or campus employment opportunities, because when you're, at college, you're a new young adult and you have to start building up your resume again. So having a job in college, and I know a lot of parents go, no, we want them to focus on studying. Well, part of that is also balancing a part-time job. I'm not saying they have to work 40 hours a week in college, but having 5 to 10 hours of doing a small part-time job is really beneficial in college and even the summer before college.
Right, right, completely. Well, and I think another thing that, getting back to is like when you talk about like setting expectations up front,
Hmm.
when we talk about the college search and application process, and this varies widely depending on the student, right?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if as a parent you have expectations on like the number of student schools you
Hmm.
want your student to apply to, and or if there are parameters around location, if there's parameters around, you know, um, uh, I lost my train of thought, but whatever parameters there are, I think it's important to have that conversation early on, right? So
Hmm.
some parents we've worked with say, you know what, I get to choose one school on your application list, right, that you're going to apply to, or I want you to apply to my alma mater,
Hmm.
right? And I think, again, having that conversation is really an important piece to do so it doesn't sideline the student. But I also think as a parent, that's tricky, that are those expectations align with who your student is,
Yeah.
right? And so this is where sometimes the student has a path that they're very excited about, and the parent can sometimes have a different pathway
Yeah.
or expectations. And it's important to remember that this is the student's pathway. It is not their pathway, whether you agree. In some ways it's hard. It's like whether you agree with their academic interest or not, like they have to go on and live their life. they're the adult here, right? Or the emerging adult that will make decisions. And so I think that's sometimes hard for parents if they feel like, oh, there are certain pathways that we're more comfortable with. So maybe
Yes.
it's like you need to go into business or you need to go into engineering, but the student's interested in maybe a more humanities path, right?
Hmm.
That's where sometimes those contentions come into play. And so it's important as a parent to like lay out some hopes and expectations, but ultimately your student is that whole person, right? And they're going to do their best as they develop those academic interests,
Yeah.
regardless of if you agree with them or not, which is sometimes hard for families, right? If especially if the parents aren't familiar with what that pathway is. And so that's something that's very interesting to kind of navigate through as a family.
Well,
But we just want to remember that student is they're the one that they're starting their life.
yeah. And going back to that expectations of even how many colleges to apply to, that number, as you and I both know, has been creeping up over the years, and it doesn't have
Yeah.
to. For the Common App, which is the website that a large amount of students use to apply to colleges, it allows you to apply to up to 20. That is not a you have to apply to 20. That is
Mhm.
it allows you to go that way. And, I had a student a few years ago that ended up applying to 40 some schools, and the thing was is that she got admitted to almost all of them, and she thought that by applying to a lot of schools that was going to narrow her list down. It didn't narrow down anything. She was
Oh,
still stuck with the huge amount of places that she wanted to go to. But then also, as you were saying, be realistic with expectations. Your list should not be just 20 of the most competitive colleges and then crossing your fingers that you're going to get into
mhm.
something, because
Right.
that's going to lead to a lot of disappointment. So think about having some balance. As you said, I love that idea of having the parents say, okay, if my student wants to apply to these 5 schools, as a parent, I would like you to also apply to this one or two places, and try and make it a variety. So it's not like, well, if you're picking Harvard, Yale, Duke, and Princeton, I'm also going to pick Stanford and U Chicago. And it's like, okay, whoa, that they're all hyper competitive. That's all going to be a very heavy list. Come up with something a little bit more balanced and a little bit more variety that way. But yeah, set some expectations. The other
Yep.
one is distance from home.
Yep.
Some kids, I want to go to college in Hawaii. Great. Do you understand the
Right.
costs of getting to and from Hawaii, and how much it's going to cost to live in Hawaii if you're not from there?
Yeah.
And so help them, give them some expectations and some reality for what they're looking for in a college.
Right. And we know after working with many students is often they dream big their junior year and want to go across the nation. And then once senior year hits and the reality starts to set in, they're like, oh, I don't know that I want to be that far away from home. So sometimes we encourage students and I tell them, ask your parents if they want locations around your area in your
Yeah.
state or in a 4 hour 4 hour driving limit or whatever. And some families are like, no, not a problem. And other families are like, yeah, that's a good idea. So having that check-in, because we never know what's going to
Yes.
happen. COVID was a prime example of
Yes.
it just derailed so many students' plans who were going to go across the nation for school and they didn't. And that could be anything from just feeling like, oh, I don't need to do this necessarily to grandma got sick or whatever that looks
Right.
like. And
Right.
so I think really building in kind of in some way like a safety net
Yes.
uh, for location.
I have one student that every college on their list, there's either an aunt, an uncle, a grandma, or a grandpa that lives within 1 hour or 90 minutes, I
Yeah,
forget, within that college. So the colleges are still scattered throughout the country, but there is a family member that is within, I think, 90 minutes is what the student picked of that college. And I'm like, I love this idea. You get to explore a wide variety of the country, but then you also have, as you said, a safety net that's nearby in case that's necessary.
exactly. Yeah.
We've covered a lot of information. So anything else you're thinking about as far as empowering parents to help guide their students through this process?
I have one other kind of section of tips here, and they're very practical. But on a day-to-day life, encourage your students to have independence. And so that means making appointments for themselves,
Ah,
right? Right.
mm-hmm.
And that can start with a hair appointment or a doctor's appointment. Um, having them go to the grocery store for you and run errands, which sounds silly. I mean, as a parent, that's fabulous because we don't have to do it. But, often I feel like as teenagers, they don't go to the grocery store with us like they used to, or they
Right.
don't run to the pharmacy to get their medication, or picking up, going through the drive-through to pick up their own
Yeah.
prescription. These are really important life skills that as parents, I think we all kind of just take on, right? Oh, we got to go to the grocery, everything, we're doing this. But it's important that they have these skills, because you're not going to be going to the drugstore for them at college when they get sick.
Right.
Even understanding, what do you take for allergies? What's the difference between Zyrtec and Benadryl?
Mm-hmm.
What do you take for a cough? Those things where it's like we load up our, or our medicine drawer and they just
Mm-hmm.
grab it. They need to understand and know how to do some of these things. And then the other piece too is like filling out forms.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
which, if they apply for a job, that's great. That's often the first experience they have with filling out a form. But think of how many forms we fill out in our life, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
often starts with college and official forms, which means they'll need to understand and know their social security number. They need to know these important kind of um, numbers, important tasks, important processes that we've learned along the way
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes we did for ourselves because parenting was different, maybe back in the 80s. Um, but that's an important life skill they need. And so I think really as a high school student, this is a great time to encourage them to be independent, encourage them to drive a long distance,
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to fill up gas. I mean, all these pieces come into play. And parents might be thinking, well, yeah, that's normal. Or why do they need to learn to do that? But there's going to be enough transition in college that they don't need to transition and try to figure out how to like fill up their car, or how to, fill out a form correctly, or figure out how to obtain their social security number. So, um,
That
I
is
mean, yeah. So, I
that
mean,
is
Chuck,
so.
like, we,
Oh my gosh, if I could give one homework assignment to every teenager, is memorize your social security number.
social security
Do not
number.
have it as a
Exactly.
picture on your phone. Memorize it as in a number in your head. When I was a teenager, it was a sticky note on my mirror in my bathroom until I had it memorized, and then
Ooh,
that
that's a
sticky note was
great
shredded up
idea.
and got rid of it. The other thing is, help your teenager use their own calendar. A lot of times,
Yes.
parents keep track of all of these appointments, and the students really don't even have. And I know there's this thing called a family calendar, but a family
Yeah.
calendar is when mom or dad or both put the appointment on the kid's calendar. The kid needs to learn how to physically put an appointment on the calendar and then send the reminder to the parent. So what Kate and I are kind of talking about is parents need to slowly start stepping back and letting their kids step forward with going shopping, setting up appointments, doing errands, because if you don't show them this, they get to college and this is where they really, crash out
Mhm.
because they have anxiety or panic and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm very confused. And that's when they're calling you at 11 o'clock at night at college because they're literally just trying to figure out, where do I go to get Advil? And some of them legitimately don't know. They're like, I don't
Yeah.
know where this comes from. It was always just in the cabinet. So yeah, help them with these small tasks.
Yes, for sure.
So Kate, any last final thoughts you have for our audience as we wrap this up here soon?
Ooh, you know what? This process is a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of stress too. But I think as parents, if you can um, remember to, my analogy, remember that you're going to be in the passenger seat. You're going to have the emergency brake, but you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be not the one in charge. But how can you empower and encourage your student to be the one in charge? I think that's a really important piece. And so that might be, as the passenger, that might be finding resources. It might be introducing them to people who work in an industry that they're interested in. It could be the person where you're taking notes on a college visit, but you're not driving. You are truly that passenger. And I think that's hard to do, but I think it's a really phenomenal like gift you're giving your child. to kind of take that transition and give them that independence. So I would encourage you to, have fun, find resources. I think school college counseling centers are wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Independent educational consultants, like all of us at College Connectors, wealth of information we have. It's a wonderful investment that pays off in dividends, as our families know. But I really think that not to stress out about it, and really just kind of enjoy it as you move forward with your student.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for being with me today here on the Don't Chuck It Up podcast. All of these tips have been really great. I think that parents will really find these useful to help empower their kids to get through the college search and the application process. Because as you said, it's a really big major decision for these young people, and parents need to be there in the driver's ed car, hopefully with their foot just slightly off of the brake. But really, I appreciate all of the time that you've spent with us today, and thanks for joining the Don't Chuck It Up podcast.
So thank you, Chuck. It was such a pleasure to talk about this with you.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today, but fear not, we will be back next week with more tips and tricks to help you conquer the college application process like a boss. Until then, remember, don't chuck it up.